Talking about having the presence of God in our lives, growing intimacy. Can I say that? Growing intimacy with God, God and me. What is my relationship with God? I plan to look at that for the next few weeks here. Just basically the Ten Commandments, the first four, my relationship with God. I have a key ring out in the van that is full of cards from stores wanting my loyalty. They want me to shop there. My kids have gotten me modernized a few years ago with this thing on my phone called Card Star. And all of those are on there as well. And so I go into a store and they say, do you have a loyalty card? I just bring this up and whatever store I'm in usually pops up first. And I just hit that and they just scan it in. And supposedly I get reward points. I asked at the store the other day, what good are these reward points doing me? And the response was, the more you shop here, the more points you get. And eventually you'll have enough to where you can get something free when you come out of the store. That sounds pretty good to me. I've been gassing up usually at the Shell station up by our house or BP Amoco for the same reason, those loyalty reward points. And I keep trying to watch where I get the most reward points from. And the other day I gassed up at BP Amoco and I got, are you ready for this? 25 cents off a gallon of gas. Now that was pretty good for being faithful to gassing up at BP Amoco for quite a while. Now yesterday I knew I needed to gas the van up. I also knew that I wasn't going to get 25 cents off at BP anytime soon again. But I went to Shell and I got 5 cents a gallon off there yesterday. Now I like that idea, getting that discount. I suppose if I was totally faithful to one or the other of those, I would consistently maybe getting 10 cents a gallon off or finding that 25 cents a gallon off more often, because what they're looking for is loyalty. They want my business. They want it all the time, and they want me to go there as my only place that I gas up. I've been thinking about this loyalty thing. And when I look at the Ten Commandments, I realize, what is God looking for? Loyalty. He's looking for a commitment. He's looking for a commitment that says, I am yours. No questions asked. Now I have to remind myself every once in a while, and I think we all do, that if we look in John chapter 15, we find it being told that we didn't choose God. He chose us. He came after us first. It is our choice in that response then to allow His presence in our lives and to choose Him as number one. The first commandment reminds me that He's a powerful God. It reminds me that He's a jealous God. It reminds me that He demands absolute authority or absolute loyalty. I'm also reminded that as I look at that verse, I am the Lord your God. He's presenting an authority to His people back then. I am the Lord your God. I am the one that you are serving. I am the one who has been there for you. It's reminding them of the authority of His presence in their lives, of how He has been there. It lays down the fact that if He is our God, then the rest of the Ten Commandments become a standard of living. I am the Lord your God, therefore, this is what I expect. I don't see any problem with that. I find that in loyalties a lot of different things. I am going to commit myself to this, and this is what it's going to take to commit myself to this thing. If I was going to go into the service as a young man, I would have put myself into having to abide by the rules and regulations of whichever arm of the services that I went into. because I'm committing to them and I would have to meet up to those. Marcy belonged to the Kiwanis for a number of years, and in order to belong to the Kiwanis, there were certain things that she had to do or you get kicked out. It's like that with anything. And so when God says, I am the Lord your God, He's just saying to us, this is what I expect. And so a reminder, if He's our God, then the rest of the 10 Commandments don't become commandments. They become a standard of living that I willingly abide by in order to serve God. I am the Lord your God. He's a powerful God. He reminds them what He did. I brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Here was God's people. They had been in Egypt for years. They had been literally killing themselves physically, making bricks. And the Egyptians made life tougher and tougher and tougher on them. And finally, God heard the cry of His people, and He delivered them from that slavery, from that bondage, from that gruesome life that they were living. And He's just reminding them, I am the Lord your God. I brought you out of the land of Egypt. I brought you out of slavery. I put you at a place where you're free to live again. It's almost as though He's saying to them, look what I did for you. Now it's your turn to follow what I want you to do. I don't really think that's what He's saying, but there's times in our human lives where somebody may do something and we'll look at them and say, after all I've done for you, look at what you've done to me. God is just reminding them of the power He had in their lives to relieve them from what they were going through. It's not an I told you so type thing. It's a thing of love. I am the Lord your God. I am the one who brought you out of slavery. Listen to me. Do what I ask you to do. You will have no other gods before me. Simple statement. No other gods before me. God is setting up a covenant here. You'll have no other gods before me. In setting up this covenant, He's setting out the terms for His continued protection, for His continued life in them, for His continued presence with them. This was not commanding man to believe in God. They already believed in God. This was laying down the authority of God. What He's saying to them, I can handle your life. I desire to handle your life. Let me do it. Here's how you need to live for that to happen. You need to have absolute, total allegiance to me. No other gods before me. Now, when I really get into what that's saying, it's saying there shall be no other gods before my face. Let me ask you something this morning. What do you see on people's faces? Can you read people's faces? Can you look at somebody and just know what they're thinking by the look on their face? It depends on how well you know somebody. Now, I've been here long enough, 20 years, to know what some of you are thinking when I'm up here speaking to you. Or when different announcements are made. Once in a while, it's a... And depending on who's doing it, I just know that they're thinking, Pastor, you're nuts. Or, Pastor, I'm just too tired to even think about that. Or, Pastor, just let me out of here now. Sometimes I see smiles on your faces, and I know that you're either laughing at me or you're really connected and you're agreeing that I've hit a nerve in your life, a spot that's really speaking to you. I can look at people that I've known for a while and just know by the look on their face that they're really going through something tough in their lives. And occasionally you can look at somebody that you think you're talking to, but you just know that they're way off here somewhere else, not paying a bit of attention. We do that with our spouses. We do it with our kids. We can just tell what someone's thinking by the look on their face. So God says, when I look at you, I want to realize that I am with you, that my Spirit is inside of you. I want to see it on your countenance. My dad called the other day. That's not unusual. Sometimes he calls twice a day. He's lonely at almost 93. The other day we were talking, and after about 10 minutes of talking, he said, "Have you heard a word I've said to you?" "Yeah, Dad, I've heard every word." "Well, what did I say?" "Well, you were talking about, "Oh, Dad, what did you say?" You see, I was trying to do about 3 things at once. Dad's gotten into the thing where he'll say, "Are you sitting there typing while you're talking to me?" "Not now." "Well, you were, because I could hear the clicking of your computer keys." "Bye, I'll call you later." And he'll hang up because he realizes I'm busy. When God comes to see us, He wants our attention. He wants our full attention. He wants to know that we are ready to talk to Him at a second's notice and that we are living for Him every second of the day. You will have no other gods before me. When I'm with you, I'll see nothing else on your face that you have allegiance to. Now, I look at this "no other gods before me" thing, and I think what God is really saying here is, I want totally you're living for me. Now, Egyptians had 2,000 gods. They had the god called Happy, H-A-P-Y. I'm not sure it was pronounced Happy. He was the god of annual flooding of the Nile River. Now, that was important because if the Nile River didn't flood and spill all the silt and stuff from the bottom of the river out onto the farmlands, the crops wouldn't grow real well. And so when springs would come, people would pray to the god Happy or whatever he was, that he would do his thing and the river Nile would flood. And so that was important in their lives. There was the god of Anubis. He guided and protected the spirit of the dead. That was important to them. Where did their dead forefathers end up? So they would pray to that god that the spirit of the dead would take them to heaven. There was Seth, the god of evil, war and chaos and storms. You didn't want to make him mad because calamity might come your way. Canaanites had their own set of gods. They had the god of Baal, who was the god of fertility, Shaker, who was the god of cattle, Dagon, who was the god of wheat, who, by the way, invented the plow, according to them. And that's where Israel went to worship. And here's God stating His authority and saying, if you want continued success, have no other gods before me. Now, I look at that in my modern life and I say, what does that have to say to me? I don't worship the god of rain. I don't worship the god of cattle. I don't worship the God of keeping my car running smooth down the road. I don't worship the God of this and that and the other thing. But I stop and say, I have all these other interests in my life. I may be interested in playing certain games, or I may be interested in having certain hobbies and certain activities. And when I look at this whole list and I see Him saying, you'll have no other gods before me, when He says, I am the Lord your God, God has a capital G on it. But when I see all these other gods, they have a lowercase g on them. And so what I have to say is, it's okay to have other interests. It's okay to be involved in other things in my life, but I cannot allow anything to take the place of the one true God being first and foremost in my life. That may occasionally mean I have to give something up because it's becoming so important I don't have time to read my Bible and pray. That may mean that sometimes I may have to give up certain friendships because they're affecting me in a way that I don't want to be affected. It may mean that certain activities may just have to go because they don't totally honor God anymore. And so when God says, I am the Lord your God, He wants absolute authority. He wants control of my life. He wants me to worship Him before anything else comes along. He has to be number one. He has to be numero uno. He has to be the supreme authority in my life. And if I'm going to be successful spiritually, that's what it's going to take. It reminds me of Matthew. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be taken care of you. Seek first God, seek first His kingdom, and every need of your life is going to be handled. Well, what are my needs? Clothing, shelter, and food. That's really all that we really need is clothing, shelter, and food. All these other things are just frills. In our modern day, we have a tendency to want all of these luxuries. And I think that was a problem back here as well. If you really get into the Old Testament, you'll find people looking at things that are really luxuries that they could get along without. But when I stop and think of my own personal life, when I stop and think that everything God does for us, the fact of the matter is, when we put God first, not only does He take care of our needs, but we get some of our wants and desires along the way as well that just kind of pad the cushion and just keep us going and keep us encouraged. We put a lot of energy and a lot of time into things that we're interested in. And I fear that at times it could get at the expense of our relationship with God. And I'm just convinced that if we would every day put as much energy into our relationship with God that we put into some other things, we can't even imagine the directions our lives would take. Because God has promised, seek me first, and everything else will fall into place. The first commandment reminds me that my relationship with God is a covenant. I promise to follow Him. He promises to lead me, to care for me, and to make me blossom where I am planted. I mentioned earlier that we find that God is a jealous God. One of the modern songs that I used to hear frequently, I haven't heard in a while, but it's He is jealous for me. God wants the best for my life. Now, we think of jealousy in human terms. Somebody has something and we want it. When I think of jealousy in God's terms, it's the fact that He wants my life in His, all wrapped up with Him, but only because He wants the best there is for me in my life. And so He'll go to great lengths to pull me into His love and into His care, to remind me that He is the Lord, my God, who has delivered me in the past. And if I'm really going to worship Him, then He will honor that in my life with joy and with peace and His presence in everything I really need. I had this thought the other day. We have this cradle for a baby. I think Marcy's parents gave it to us when Lee was born, our son was born. So the thing's getting ancient. It's about 41 years old now. And it's been taken apart and put together a number of times. It's stored up on a shelf up in our garage. It's still there. And down through the years, it has been used for some babies. It's been used to store some things in. And now it's stored away. I suppose someday maybe a great-grandbaby may need a cradle or something. I don't know. Its purpose is to hold a baby. And whenever it would get used to hold something other than a baby, it would just remind me that it's not being used for its intended purpose. Its purpose is to hold a baby. Our purpose in life is to hold the Spirit of God in our lives. And whenever we let something else take place over that Spirit of God, we're not being used for the intended purpose that God created us for. To have His presence in our lives, to worship Him, to walk and talk with Him every day, everywhere we go. We could look at that cradle and say, no, you won't use it for anything else. God looks at us and says, no, you cannot be used for anything else. I want you. I want to be your God. I want you to accept me. And I will do everything I can to pull me into that life. He created us. He wants us to be ready for our intended purpose, to enjoy life with Him. So He goes out of His way to protect us and starts by saying this first commandment: you shall have no other gods before me. Keep me first. Keep me first. It's a challenge. It's a challenge. We express our love for God by keeping His commandments, and He reciprocates by His daily presence in our lives. I'm just reminded of another thought here when He says, you will have no other gods before me. There's also some translations of the Bible that say, and don't name any of those gods in front of me. I thought long and hard about that this week. I remembered years ago when Marcy and I first got married, I had some nice bookends. And they had initials on them. And Marcy one day said, those are nice bookends. Where did you get them? And I made the mistake of telling her they came from an old girlfriend. I gave her the name of that girlfriend. You would know who that girlfriend is. Oh, yeah, you would. SS was her initials. And what I should have said is, oh, a friend gave me those years ago. A church member gave them to me. I'd probably still have them to this day if I would have said that. Now, don't go running out of here and telling Marcy what I said. For all I know, she's back there listening to the service. No, she's got kids. She's not listening to the service. And it bothered her that I had those bookends on my bookshelf. I could just tell it bothered her because she knew where they came from. It remembered this old girlfriend in front of her face all the time. She'd see those bookends and, oh yeah, I used to date her. I got rid of them, finally. I think I destroyed them. I think I just totally got rid of them and just wiped them out. So they were gone. But see, that's what God wants. No other gods mentioned in His name because our lives are to honor Him.